The last memory I had is I knocked on her door before I left to go do this training at my office, and she had her door locked because she was getting dressed. And I said, honey, I'll be back.
If you knew that these words would be the last words spoken to a loved one, what would you say?
So I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too, Daddy. And those are the last spoken words between us.
Every 6 minutes, somebody in America dies of a blood clot.
We're here to change that statistic. Welcome to Taking a Breath, a Stop the Clot podcast.
A podcast dedicated to bringing awareness of the dangers of blood clots from the clotting disorders community to the world.
With the help of many notable blood clot survivors, we are here to give you the knowledge and the skills you need to prevent this silent killer.
My name is Leslie Lake. I am the president of the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I am a blood clot survivor.
And my name is Todd Robertson. I'm the patient engagement liaison for the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I am a 6-time blood clot survivor.
And we're here to stop the clot. In the wake of the earth-shattering devastation that comes with the loss of a child, how do you reckon with the reality of such a loss or find the strength to keep going? Our guest today is somebody who has unfortunately faced said reality. Here to discuss the life and joy of Emily Adkins, as well as the groundbreaking political advocacy through the memory of his daughter, father, advocate, and blood clot prevention champion, please join me in welcoming Doug Adkins.
Well, my name is Doug Adkins. I'm the father of Emily Adkins. Emily was 23 years old when she passed of a massive pulmonary embolism stemming from a blood clot associated with an ankle fracture on her right side. Emily was a big part of our family life. She was involved in my company. She was the People Success Officer. Probably one of the happiest, sweetest, compassionate voices, people you could imagine meeting. She was liked to have fun. She liked to giggle, and she was my fun girl. Whenever she was around, it was always wonderful to see her wit and humor and her insight. And she was mature way beyond her years. I mean, she had a great maturity about her and great sense of compassion for others. So Emily had a emergency gallbladder surgery on her brother's birthday, August the 15th of 2022. She had some pain coming and going, so my wife took her immediately to the ER, and she was treated down at UF Health down in Jacksonville. University of Florida has a hospital there, and she needed emergency surgery. And so she had that surgery, and then about a month later, while she was at the office, she slipped on a wet floor and fractured her right ankle. Just thought it was an ankle fracture, no big deal, And so she was placed into a cast and told to immobilize for this next 4-week period. And so she went to see her orthopedic surgeon, and they removed the cast. They put a boot on and gave her a list of these exercises to do so she would exercise the ankle. On the x-ray, it showed that the bones were not healing at the pace that they should have been. And so obviously that's a concern that obviously maybe not a blood flow. I don't know what was impairing the healing of the fracture. So, I was very excited about getting the cast off and getting the boot because she really wanted to get back to her house. Being with mom and dad's great, but being on your own as an independent 23-year-old young lady is better. And so she liked her space and she liked her private time. And so, she was fastidious about following the instructions she was given. She was very rule compliant, very rule driven, very compliant with whatever you told her to do. So on the morning of October 21st, it had been cold the night before, and Emily has asthma. She woke up and she was feeling a little dizzy and had ringing in her ears. So we thought, well, this is the asthma acting up because of what had happened. I told her to go ahead and get herself a shower in case, things did not improve. Then we would just take her to the hospital and get her looked at. She took her inhalers, and she was working. So, literally 2 days before she passed, she was working on PowerPoints for training, and she was working on that Friday, the 21st. And I had to leave to go do a quick meeting, and I was going to come right back. And Emily had said that, she's feeling a little bit better. She was on the phone with the staff, and they detected some raspiness in her voice. So they called my wife, Janet. Janet immediately called her and immediately could determine she was in distress. So she called 911, and she told her, she said, honey, if you could open the front door so the EMT can get in, that would be probably helpful. So literally the last thing Emily did before going into cardiac arrest is she opened the front door, and the EMT found her collapsed in cardiac arrest. We lived 2 miles from the hospital, and I bought this house because it was so close to the hospital, and I thought, that's a good thing, and, if something happens, you're pretty close, and it could be a life-saving decision. So they told my wife when she showed up that she still had a heartbeat, and they wouldn't say anything else. And then so they got her over to the hospital, and then I pulled into the hospital, and of course they put us in a separate room. We thought, well, for sure she's here in the hospital. This is where they can save her, or they can help. And the doctor comes in, and he's shaking his head. He's just shaking his head, not a word, just shaking his head. So we went in to see her, and they were still doing chest compressions. I've been in healthcare 37 years, and aside from kind of a casual, generalized interest or awareness of blood clots, I had no idea what I know about now. And so they just said there was nothing more they could do. And so we prayed with her, we sang hymns, it was just probably the most tragic day of my life. There's not a single day that goes by I don't live this day. But this was all within an hour. And so what we know is that there's things that could have been done, should have been done. But more importantly, I think it's a matter of making sure people know who meet the risk criteria. Emily was a bit overweight. That's a risk factor. Her family had a history. Her grandmother had blood clots on both sides of the family. Historically, every time Janet and I, we've been involved in Florida politics probably for, about 30 years. And Janet served in the Florida House of Representatives for 8 years, 2 years on the school board. She's been supervisor of elections here in our county. But, and I've served on the Republican Party of Florida's executive board. But, the reality is that every time you're confronted with something like this, you try to turn your attention in terms of what you know to something positive and to do something that helps create addition. The subtraction associated with the loss of a child is so earth-shattering. It's difficult, if not impossible, to describe it to somebody who's not walked in those shoes. But reality is that, the only kind of place of peace or comfort you get is when it's through the process of addition, not subtraction. Quite frankly, I've got a whole piece of legislation that I think would absolutely fix all of this. But getting consensus on it is maybe a little bit more difficult. So the legislative process is about building consensus. So, we thought, well, step one is getting this work group to start looking at the data surveillance system, the standard of care. And there's 10 other things associated with the bill that, the work group is charged with. Whether they get to all of them, I don't know. But, reality is they've got 10 items on their work list. But, the truth is that we've got to get consensus about what to do and how to do it. So, we went about, got the bill introduced, and we got up 3-4 o'clock in the morning to go over there and make sure we were there at every committee meeting. And we were there to speak at every committee. And, what was so remarkable about all of this was in a time of great political division in our country and in our state here in Florida, when this bill would come on agenda, there would be a hush in the room. We were all together for that minute, for that instant when this bill was up on agenda. And for that brief moment, that brief window, and one of the legislative aides told me just how unique that moment was, because for that minute, we were all Floridians. We were all together. And so, the bill had 83 co-sponsors to it, the entire Florida Senate. Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill on June the 5th. He also lost his sister, Christina DeSantis, to a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot. So, we know this touches everybody. Well, the last time we were all together was after the pandemic. We went to Denmark together. And Emily loved to travel. We took her to Jerusalem and Israel twice. She'd been to Rome. Took her to Paris after her graduation from high school. She, has been to Switzerland and Austria. And Emily was a leader, and you would often find her mapping the direction, mapping the way for us, and telling us what train we needed to be on, telling us what gate we had to be at. She had a great love for design and colors and painting and art. And, the last memory I had is I knocked on her door before I left to go do this training at my office on the 21st. And she had her door locked because she was getting dressed. And I said, honey, I'll be back. So I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too, Daddy. And those are the last spoken words between us. The last spoken words with your daughter or your child will be the last words you remember. So, if I was to give anybody advice, it'd be make sure the last spoken words you have with your child, even on your worst day, include the words, I love you.
When it comes to preventative care, we can try our best to recognize and diagnose a looming clotting event by recognizing and addressing the notable signs and symptoms. But what if the danger remained just as probable without any of the telltale warnings you and I are familiar with? Here to discuss the dangers of hidden symptoms and asymptomatic clotting disorders is Dr. Elliot Hout.
Sometimes blood clots are, to us as clinicians, pretty obvious. A patient comes in with a very swollen leg. It happened acutely. There's no sign of trauma. The top of our differential is that's going to be a blood clot in the leg. Or a patient with a pulmonary embolism has all of the classic signs and symptoms. Their heart is racing. They're short of breath. Their oxygen level on their pulse oximeter is very low. Those are classic signs and symptoms. But not every patient has every single one of those. Sometimes we hear stories of, it just kind of felt like I had a little Charlie horse in my leg. And it's a little more subtle. And I think it's an important thing for patients to think about. You don't have to have every single symptom that you hear about to have a blood clot. And it might be a little more subtle than that. It might be shortness of breath going up the stairs when you never used to be. Or it might be, we've talked with, pro athletes who are suddenly short of breath, like out of the blue. And they're still in way better shape than me, But for them and their baseline, it has dramatically changed. So I would say anything like that are these subtle findings. Talk to your doctor and see if it's something that it might be attributable to a blood clot, and there might be testing that could be done to see if that's what's causing the problems.
Doug, thank you for joining us today. I feel like you and I have known each other for a lot longer than we actually have. And you used the word epidemic, which I know we've talked about before, and truly it is an epidemic. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because it was, for me, it was a very emotional and frankly monumental day, because I think it was the laying the groundwork for finally moving blood clot awareness through this country. And that was the day that the final vote came in for the bill. Can you talk about what that was like for you? Because I felt like Emily was with us.
Well, for me, that last day when the bill had passed the Senate, you had all 40 senators. They unlocked the machine and asked all the senators to co-sponsor the bill, which they all did. Most of them knew Emily because they knew her from when she was a House page and messenger in the Florida House, when Janet served in the Florida House from 2008 to 2016. With every single bill, they can die not for ill reason, but because they ran out of time on the calendar or because of just technical things associated with the legislative process. And so, you're always worried and you have anxiety about when, the process is being slowed down by other more important bills, et cetera. And so we were just on pins and needles waiting for the bill. I mean, and you were there with us all day, and we were waiting all day and well into the evening. It was just a moment of incredible emotion for us. Incredible appreciation for the fact that so many members of the legislature were coming together in a bipartisan manner on this one issue. We know and we knew that there was substantial opportunity to bring greater attention to this issue and to make a difference, with the work of the work group, which is an ongoing process. So it was just a very emotional day for us because of all that we had gone through and that we were going through, and we just felt like it was such a blessing to see that final vote come down and them to unlock the machine and record the vote, and that was very dramatic moment in our life. And, we've passed lots of legislation in Tallahassee, but nothing nearly as personal or as meaningful.
I don't think people truly understand how important this is, what you and your family did that day to get that through, because it is the basis moving forward of something that has never been in place in this country. And it will save countless lives. And so as a survivor, as somebody who's involved in this on a day-to-day basis, thank you. I cannot even imagine the tragedy that you all have experienced, and to be willing to do this is just nothing short of amazing. So Emily deserves, your whole family deserves a tremendous amount of thanks for this, because this is the most important thing I think that has ever happened in the blood clot space.
This is just the first step in our minds, and we are very committed to seeing systemic change here in Florida, and we are hopeful that through the National Blood Clot Alliance that whatever change happens in Florida can then be taken to the national level, and other states will. States like to learn from each other. States like to take legislation from one another and to solve problems. And so things that are working in one state, committee staff and legislators, quickly adopt those to carry into other states. And so we're hopeful that the Emily Atkins Prevention Act will have a kind of enduring impact on other legislation. So, we actually drafting this bill, whenever I kind of create a bill, I usually put things in there for people to take out. I won't tell you what they are, but reality is that because it's always a negotiation. But this bill passed completely intact. And so the items that are there that the work group is empowered to take up is very powerful. I mean, listen, this is one of the first work groups, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, is the work group has the power to take up the standard of care and say, here's what we think should happen. And then the legislature has to take it up in debate and say, yeah, we agree, or, no, and here's why. But it's very hard to overcome the impact and the power of a policy working group that has studied the issue. Very, very hard to go contrary to the recommendations of that work group. And that's one of the reasons you do it this way is complex issues, things that are new. These things are, you're going to be cutting a new course in the side of the mountain. Well, this is how you do it. And we want to make sure that, we're set up for next year, for the next 2025. The work group is required to issue a report on the 4th of January. The reason that date is so important is that's Emily's birthday. So on Emily's birthday, this work group will issue its report to the governor, Senate President, and House Speaker for consideration in terms of whatever they recommend. I'm not sure what'll happen, but at the end of the day, again, it's an incremental process of modernization and change.
For our listeners, Emily's bill has been now rolled out into the state of New York. It's in the state of Illinois, trying to get passed in the state of Illinois. We're moving on to Connecticut. And then, of course, we're working with Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester in Delaware, who lost her husband, Charles, to pulmonary embolism. And again, needlessly so, should never have happened. And this bill is the catalyst and the baseline for everything that's being done now. So, I sit here today and I thank you for doing this. Out of great tragedy has come something amazing that's going to, I think, save hundreds of thousands of lives.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much for all your time and effort. We love seeing you. I still need to send you a check for Deion Sanders. There was a story down at the Florida Senior Living Association. We were betting on these jerseys and Leslie outbid me. I was like, oh my gosh. I said, I'm going to have to run on down there and submit another bid. But anyways, I told her, I said, I'm going to bid for that Deion Sanders jersey.
I think you let me outbid you, actually. There's no check involved, but I would be very happy to send the Deion Sanders signed shirt back to you. But, kidding aside, we can't thank you enough for joining us today and just your leadership and, helping to save lives and put an end to this epidemic that is very endable. And so I look forward to continuing to work with you and Jana and Douglas going forward. And, you're part of my family now.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
We want to thank Doug for sharing his strength and vulnerability with us today, and for sharing the joy of his daughter, Emily Adkins, and all of the tremendous work being done on her behalf. We would also like to thank you for joining us here today on another episode of Taking a Breath. A special thank you to Dr. Elliot Howd from Johns Hopkins for sharing his endlessly useful insight into all things clotting. For more information on risks, prevention, and community, please visit stoptheclot.org.
We know the patient because we are the patient. Together with listeners like you, we can collectively stop the clot.
Another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.